Well, hello my fellow car modelers. Welcome to a very special Lucas Kits. And the reason why is because I am going to cover a kit that is extremely special to me. Something that I've been wanting to pull out of my collection and show you guys if you're not familiar with this kit. And the reason why this particular kit in this fashion with this box art is so special to me, as it was covered in my second episode I ever did showing some of my built models, is this was probably my second, it wasn't my second model car that I ever built, but it was my second model car I built when I started getting serious about model car building back in 1985. And the reason is because, one, I was fascinated with the 1940 Ford Coupe, but I also found something on this box that attracted me so much that I have built the model twice and done it this way, and we will get to that shortly. To begin with, this kit has been put out in many different forms, many different even styles. There's been a sedan version, which you could also do it as a 1939 Ford, and there was also the sedan delivery, which had been out a couple different times. All pretty much basically the same kit, but my favorite version is this coupe, the I guess it would be a 5-window coupe, and I believe this is a kit that AMT has put out since the 60s. I believe the tooling would be the 60s. It is an old tooling, and to me, I think it still stands up today, even though within the past decade or so, Revell put out an outstanding 40 Ford Coupe with some really great detail and a little high parts count. I do have that kit, and I do want to build one day, but this one still is one of my top favorite kits of all time. I just love it. I love what it looks like when it's done. So again, this kit has been done many different times in many different box arts. I have a few different versions of that too, but this box art is so important to me. I'm a big fan of the color blue, so my eyes were immediately attracted to it when I saw it on the shelves back in the day. I do have a few versions like this. This is probably my most complete version, so I'm gonna show you what's inside the kit right now. But let's take a look at the box art, and I want to show you what was the thing that sparked my interest finding this kit back in 1985 that made me want to build the models that I built. So let's go ahead and show you. And it was on this side of the box that really caught my attention. And if you've noticed, right here and here, there's a different box art model. It looks like there was a couple of different models built for this box art. And this one in particular really caught my eye because I really loved the black fenders and the blue body. What makes this such an easy kit, as we will show you in a few minutes, to do a two-tone like this is the fact that your running boards and fenders are separate from the main body. And so you can completely paint them in different pieces. There's no masking involved, and you get yourself a great look. So this really caught my eye a lot, so I wanted to build that. There was quite a few things. I saw this die right here that was the gear shift. I wanted that in there, and it had this cool display where you had the flathead. And this particular box stated that it was an Oldsmobile engine in there that was optional, and that caught my attention because at the time my very first car was an Oldsmobile, so I thought, cool, I'm going to put the Oldsmobile engine in it, which later on, as I learning more about cars, it was actually a Buick Nailhead. Still was cool looking, and that's been the engine that I always put in this kit when I build it. But the flathead Ford is really it's a simple version of it, but it is a very good looking version of it. So I did this whole thing back in the day of building the model and actually having the Ford flathead completely built up and on this little stand that came in the kit. So let's take a look at the kit. So we will start with the instructions. AMT instructions were always pretty good illustrated. Gives you a little history on the car, which was back in those days because I had an interest in these cars and I didn't have the knowledge that I have today. On account I was only 20 years old. Now that I'm 51, I've worked on a few cars and know a little bit more, not much more, but a little bit. But it helped me in learning about the cars I was interested in. That's what was always cool about Ertl. It was also very educational. And it kind of opens up weird, but a lot of reading in here, but it was all very good. And the instructions, especially back in the day when I built this, I was a very inexperienced modeler. It was really, really easy to do. So it just is basically a very good illustrated and explained set of instructions to build this model properly. You've got your different versions. You can do your drag version with your blocked out grill, your custom, and your regular street versions. And it also does a little rundown on the decal sheet that came with this car. And now we'll start with the body. And as you can see, which is really nice, the body is done into two separate pieces, which makes making a two-tone paint job extremely easy. As I did a couple of times, is I painted this portion black, and this portion, back in the day, I used the Tester's Sapphire Blue, which I really love, and I've been trying to find another paint to replicate that exact hue of metallic blue. I always loved how that Tester's looked, but I just don't like the quality of the paint, so I don't like using it. But back in those days, it was my first shot of spraying a model with a spray can. Looking at the body, it is very, very well. Especially, remember, this was done back in the 60s, the tooling. They didn't have the computers and everything. And from everything I've seen, and looking at these cars for real, and knowing a few guys who own them, it was actually fairly accurate. Very good detail on the firewall, except that you have some big gaping holes for your hinges that were very clunky and toy-like, but it still got the look that you were needing. And this places right down on it like that, and you've got yourself an extremely good-looking 40 Ford. Look at that. And I always found it kind of interesting, this light pale blue that they would mold these in. I always found these early AMT kits to have very neutral color in their plastic that really helped with painting, especially back in the day when I didn't use primers and everything. It was very easy to paint these cars. They would sometimes have them very light beige or this light blue, and I always actually preferred having a little bit of color in my plastic compared to just white, because when you have a white plastic car, as much everybody loves that, when you get a kit and it's molded in white, I find it very hard to see the imperfections in the white. Here you can really see the imperfections when you got a little bit of color into your plastic. That's my personal opinion, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And now on to the chrome tree. This being a kit that I purchased already had been opened. There's a couple of missing parts I noticed. I think I have a missing bumper here, but there's just this straight bumper, nothing on there. There's the custom bumpers and some bumpers with some bumperettes on them. So you had a couple of different choices, and I believe the custom wheels, which they were like Keystone wheels, I'm not too concerned about missing them. I usually didn't like using those Keystone wheels, but as you can see in the box art, there's the wheels right there. They were pretty good looking. So if you get this kit, you do have that opportunity for custom wheels. The chrome is a little rough, but again, this is an old issue. Chrome wasn't as nice as it is today, but it did the job. You have your grille here and your different engine parts depending on what direction you were going to go. You had a blower, there was a blower belt cover. There's your, I would say probably an Offenhauser or Stromberg's intake and carburetors. You had tri-carburetors here, different types of hubcaps. Right there's your headlight bezels. This right here, which is my favorite, the little poverty caps with the Ford Deluxe on there and the rings, and then there's a nice set of Ford steel wheels in the kit. That was always my favorite way to go. I like that look. I would paint the wheels body color blue and put these caps on there and rings, and I just thought the look was really good. And of course you got your tacks and gauges and different performance parts and hot rod items. So this thing had a really cool to date of back in the 60s and 70s hot rod parts. And you even have like a chrome dropped axle so you could lower that front end. I used to use this axle quite a bit. Let's see if I can flip it around and let you get a good look at it. Because they're also on the regular trees a stock axle to have it at ride height. But to lower this thing, you had this, and it really helped out a lot if you wanted to get that lowered hot rod stance or that rake. Basic clear. It's just one whole piece to give you all the glass except your side glass there, which is pretty common with models. Not having the windows rolled up, so you can see the interior good. And you got your wing windows right there and a couple of headlights. Very clear glass, very well done. and it gave you the right look. Of course, the problematic flashing that Ertl had a lot, especially by the 80s when these molds were used so much. But, you know, it was easy to get rid of. But you had, I believe, this right here is the Oldsmobile engine. Well, excuse me, not Oldsmobile engine as it says on the box art in this particular issue, but the Buick Nailhead engine. And you have a very nice, simple businessman coupe interior with no back seat, which is great when you're wanting to build a race car. But also back in those days, this particular car used to have an edition called the Businessman Coupe or the Salesman Coupe, where it was a popular car for traveling salesmen to buy, and they didn't have a back seat, so they had a lot of storage room for their demo product. So this is really cool that they did that with the basic deluxe interior. And here we got the deluxe hood, and we have some suspension parts, your basic front end bracing or radius arms and steering rods. It's very basic. Again, they didn't go over the top with detail, but it gave you the right look. Came with a really basic but very cool roll bar to put in there, which was always a nice little added attraction, especially the fact that you had your stripped or racing looking interior. This right here is a leftover product from the sedan delivery, so this doesn't get used. There's a couple of pieces like that went to the sedan delivery that you always had this extra door that was totally useless, and you didn't put it on your model. It went into the parts box, so you always had a whole bunch of back doors for your sedan delivery. And here was a really cool part on this kit I always liked. I've used a few times. Now let me flip it this way. The racing grille block out. If you wanted to do a stock car or a Bonneville car, that was always kind of a really neat, cool added feature. I've used it in a couple of customs or hot rods that I built of doing different versions of this 40 Ford. And there's a radio here. Simple. And here, one of the wheels are missing, but it's actually in the box, so I'm all okay. Here's your stock height front straight axle there, or pretty much a straight axle, with the molded on single mono leaf spring. A blower hat if you go in that direction, which of course the hood does have the cutout that fits that hat perfect. So if you wanted to have a blower sticking out of the top, give it that hot rod look. And another option for the blower with the belt and everything if you wanted to go that route. And here we got a couple of really neat pieces. You got your stock steering wheel, but here is the intake right there for the tri-power, and a decent little fan. But here we've got the heads for the Buick Nailhead, and it even has spark plugs sticking out, which was always neat. I found neat when I first got this kit, being a beginner with models. And you see those spark plugs, and then of course the flathead. It even has a spark plug sticking out, and they molded little spark plug wires on there. That was kind of cool with a little paint technique. You can make it look pretty good. And you got your basic rear end, axle tube, all the rear suspension, and the mono leaf. Again, simple, but it gave it the right look. When it's all assembled, it looks really well. And then you have your basic frame, chassis, floorboard. The only thing I always hated, I just thought it always sucked, is that it had the molded in exhaust. But they give you enough pieces here that if you wanted to do a dual exhaust that would fit into all these sections here, you could get this same look on this side, and you could do a dual exhaust. Again, it's very basic, but it was pretty accurate to what a 40 Ford frame chassis would look like. There's my block halves for the flathead V8. A lot of molded in parts. Doesn't have a lot of parts, very easy to put it together, but put together and painted really well detail wise, it actually would make a pretty decent looking flathead. Not up to the standards of what's been out today and some of the kits in the past couple decades, but back in the day, this was a very, very nice flathead. And we've got a pretty decent front seat, and there's the backs of the front seat right there. Very good, well detailed dashboard there. The gauge windows, or whatever you would call that, are so small. There is some engraving in there, but it was so small, lots of times I would just paint them black. You couldn't see them anyways, so you'd move on from that. But the dashboard looked pretty good. You'd paint it body color, it would look right in that, and you could detail it very well with some really good steady hand paint detail. And there's a few other parts that are kind of lingering in that box. Again, this was an old kit that I purchased secondhand, so a lot of stuff had fell off the trees, but it's basic stuff, not really need to show it. But there were a couple of different sets of tires. One set of tires is missing, which were some wide Goodyears that were pretty basic. You'd find in a lot of older AMT or little kits, and if you have a few of them, you would know those tires and wheels. Looked like at one time somebody rated the tires and those Keystone wheels out of this kit, which is fine. I've got plenty more of those if I ever want to use them. But these are the tires that are pretty cool. Those stock skinny Firestones with the pie crust around them. That's always a cool looking tire. I've used that tire on this kit many times with the standard steel wheel. It gives a good appearance. And then you've got some good old-fashioned, skinny slicks if you want to do your drag version. Little Goodyear slicks. They're kind of period correct for the 60s. Very squared off bias ply. You sand these up and give them a good detail. They are a very nice looking little slick to go onto a early drag car from the 60s. And lastly, the decal sheet. It actually is a pretty neat decal sheet. It's got a cool name, the Avenger, the way the font is and the coloring. It's got some really neat things on here that I always liked and had used on a lot of kit. These bumper stickers, Street is Neat, Ford Power, Flathead Forever. It was always kind of neat. They're kind of 70-ish hot rod bumper stickers, and they're fun to put on any kind of car, or this car if you choose. The flames fit the body really well. I've seen some guys do some really good work with these flames, and your typical Ford and different little contingency stickers to do a race version. The weakest part of this decal sheet, I would say, would be your license plate decals. They're not very realistic looking. I've never seen anybody use them, nor have I, so that's probably the only downfall of this decal sheet. But I have used this decal sheet in the past. They survived pretty good. I bet you anything I could stick these in water and they'll come out in one piece and will stick onto any body I want to put them on, any model kit I want to put them on. So they're kind of good to have. I've rated a bunch of stuff off of these decal sheets over the years because I've had so many of them. So there you go. It's got some good graphics with it. So there you go with the 40 Ford that personally is very close to my heart, and this personal version as I showed you. I love this, and I'll tell you, I have several versions of this kit in this box art among other box arted versions of this 40 Ford. And I'm going to put a link at the end of this video that will redirect you to that second episode so you can check that out, that I show both those models and kind of talk a little bit about it. You always have that little special thing that brings some great memories back to you of all your years of model car building. I've invested so much of my life into model cars. They're so important to me, and it's just been a big source of enjoyment throughout my life, and this one is one of the ones that really kicked it off for me. I have been asked, what's your favorite kit? The AMT 40 Ford is what pops into my head. I've got a lot of kits I love, but this one is dear to my heart. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. Do you have a particular kit that's really dear to your heart? Put it down in the comments below. I want to read about what you guys have, what model kit is really, really important to you, and do you have multiples of it just because you love it that much? Thank you for watching Luka's Kits. Keep cutting that styrene, keep gluing your fingers together, and we'll see you in the next video. Cool that they did that with the basic deluxe interior. Whoa!